Gentleman's question about sort of exchanges being fit for purpose, and my question to the panel is, if one of the missions, if you like, of exchanges now is for the promotion of long-term sustainable economic development in the jurisdiction in which they operate, then which of the four models that I have identified is most fit for purpose? Because I can identify privately owned, not-for-profit, partly or wholly owned by the state, and exchanges which are part of an investment holding company, if you like, that owns multiple exchanges now.
Okay, just repeat those four again, because that's a great question to bounce around the panel. We're going to start with Donald, then Michelle, then Chairman Geng, and then Rani for quick. Which model fits? The models are?
Privately owned, wholly or partly owned by the state, not-for-profit, or entities that are multi-exchanges, Euronext for example, so an investment holding vehicle that owns multiple exchanges.
Donald, do you have a preference or can you be persuaded?
Yeah, I mean, I did say that, I think there's an issue in there. I think the question is really good, but I don't have a preference one way or the other, actually. But I do think that ownership can affect behaviours, and that is an issue. And if you look at other forms of ownership elsewhere, probably the best form of ownership in terms of direct contact and long-term sustainability is things like family enterprises. Now, I think we need to look at the models that exist elsewhere, and so if you've got a kind of ownership model, the purest form of ownership, where there's a greatest alignment of interest, is the one that's closest to the individual or the family unit, and then the private unit, then the listed unit where it's owned by responsible investors, and then you can go down to an ownership model, and I'm not talking about stock exchanges here, but of any entity where it's day traders. So you've got a kind of ownership model of full responsibility, full ownership rights, responsibilities down to some form of ownership, but there's absolutely no responsibility being exercised. And I think everything falls into that category. And stock exchanges, I think, have to find their own way to it. But I think the real issue is about behaviours, not about the actual ownership.
My mother warned me never to interrupt a 6'5" Scotsman. But thank you for that. And straight over to Michelle.
Well, very briefly, I am in favour of a for-profit company, but unlisted, and a very serious regulatory environment.
我如果用一句话来讲的话，为了节省时间，我如果用一句话来讲的话，那么这个交易所的性质应当从本国的实际情况出发，什么样的国情就实行什么样的交易所管理体制。好，谢谢。
Thank you, Chairman. Rani, just to finish off there.
Well, I think that I share the same view with the chairman of the Shanghai Stock Exchange. There's really no one size fits all. Different model will present different challenges, and what model works best, it really depends on the situation in the country. The legal framework, the relationships, how are you at a nascent stage, are you at a developed stage, do you have a strong regulator? So there are many factors that come into play. So therefore, my answer is that it really depends on the stage of development really a country is at. Thank you.
Yes, Steve Wakewood. One more question, Steve, and then we will go to the panel for closing comments on your question. So please give a microphone to the gentleman in the second row. Only give him one microphone though.
I was very good. I waited until the end this time rather than taking up most of the Q&A last as I did
that's
before.
Self-regulation.
It was exactly, which we're all in favour of here. So Steve Wakewood from Aviva Investors. I just wanted to, as we go into the breakout sessions and we consider what ideas have come out of this initiative, the session so far, the one I really wanted to highlight was Chairman Geng's idea for an assessment tool for stock exchanges on sustainability, which I think is a superb idea, and it's a comment more than a question, so it will help with the time. I'd like us all to think about what role we can individually creating that assessment tool. It would be a wonderful outcome of today's event.
Stephen. excellent, because you've done my summary far more articulately than I could ever have done it, so I really appreciate that. I think we're in our last 2 minutes. I'm going to go to, just really, very quickly, each of the panelists, just for a closing sentence, in terms of maybe responding to what you've just said and taking it on into the workshop sessions. So let's start with Chairman Gang for a closing sentence.
我没有听清楚这个主持人先给我提的问题。用一句话总结呢，我就觉得我们这次会议开得非常有意义，我们研讨这个课题非常有意义。通过大家的互相交流的信息，这个听到了不同的意见。这样说了3句话，还用一句话来总结的话呢，就是我们这次会议开得很有意义。这个，那就一句话。
You are a master of brevity and wisdom, which is a great skill. Donald, beat that.
If I just go back to the original questions on the paper, just to let the audience know that in the year 2000, British pension schemes for the first time were required to disclose information on how they deal with ESG issues, and that's, I think, been one of the big springboards that's actually changed attitudes in the UK. It was not prescriptive, but there was an obligation to deliver those statements, and I think that's made a big difference. It's something we could all work on, and that, if you like, is back to the hybrid model that Rani mentioned.
Michelle, we didn't get to microfinance, but that's for another day. Your closing sentence.
Well, I have nothing to add. In fact, in what was said before, the only thing I will insist upon is maybe also some modesty in what we are doing, the responsibility we have. If we see the scale of the problems we have in the last few years, we need a little bit more modesty.
Rani, and then I'll then close.
Thank you. I think that if we are going to move ahead in a significant manner with this sustainability agenda, then clearly collaboration is very important. So in that respect, of course, the stock exchanges have the WFE, and I think sustainability should take on a more meaningful agenda. I'm sure they're already looking at it, but a more meaningful agenda towards an outcome. That's where we saw this assessment of tools coming about. The other area is, of course, for the stock exchanges themselves to collaborate with the various stakeholders in this issue of sustainability, both international as well as domestic, and so working together, I think can bring about a much more meaningful and speedy outcome for the stock exchanges.
Let's close in this way. I put a challenge to the organisers, perhaps the UNCTAD and the PRI and collaborating partners. From Chairman Gang's suggestion, and then Stephen Wagan of Aviva Investors' capture of that, is that something that you want to focus on and see how this emerging community might work on something like that? So let's not forget that. Let's hold that. My closing point: good session. It's the first chapter in a much larger book. I feel there's an hour is tight to do voluntary, hybrid, regulatory, but we've begun to tease the issues out. One observation I'd like to make is that in the opening session of the UNCTAD event, a number of people commented that there weren't any of our female peers on the panel, and I think in terms of the gang who ganged up on Donald, so that's Rani and Jane and our friend from Responsible Research. That is a rebalancing which the conference should be grateful to us. Not finishing on a light point, the chairman made the point, these are serious issues, they really need deeper research. Jane, you've referenced that a number of times. We know that there's a lot of complexity. The work of the World Federation of Exchanges is absolutely first rate, and I think we've got some focus points there. Closing, let's put your hands together for Donald, Rani, Chairman Gang.
Excuse
Excuse me, can I just make a housekeeping announcement just about our adjusted schedule? We will have a coffee break now until 4 o'clock. And then at 4 o'clock, session 3 will start. Session 3 are the breakout sessions, where we split up into 3 different groups. We have 3 rooms for regulators, stock